Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, speed racers. Take your spot on the starting grid. Get ready to drop the foot and get those EV motors whirring. It's time to tear down the straight for another Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. And here he is, all decked out in helmet, racing suit, knee pads, elbow pads, wrist guards and gaudy cape. It's Matthew Dickerson himself. Seems like a bit of overkill, Matt.
I'll take the helmet off, sorry. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
So I've had some fun this week. Actually, I'll go back to a story from many years ago. I remember doing some work for an organisation with their servers and their IT environment, etc., and they'd actually had their server stolen. Now, we had lots of very good security and lots of online security, so making sure they had proper passwords, all the sort of normal things you do. We've got good firewalls in place, and they had a secured area for their server.
Yeah, but so we got this server in a box.
In a server room,
yeah.
Rack, etc.
Yeah.
And that's all secured electronically as well as physically.
I reckon you'd need a big bag for that.
You would, but they just had some guys come in who said, we're here to do some IT work. And they wheeled a trolley into the server room, picked up the server equipment and wheeled it out while all the staff went, okay. So sometimes you can get
and
things
they had
like
no
that.
server anymore.
They had no server anymore. Now, that was years ago, but I saw one. I was just in with the business just in the last week, and I suppose it comes down to that thing where water will take the easiest path to get from A to B, and humans will do the thing that's most convenient to them. Now, this particular place had some products that were worth a lot of money, so they had some security in place. They had some safes in place, and those safes needed a key to get into them. Makes sense. So they had a nice big key. It looked like an old jailer's key, actually, the big old-fashioned jailer's key. So they needed that big key, and they were safes. I reckon the safe alone would have been 200 kilos. So they were big safes, 1.8 metres tall, full of expensive equipment. So the idea was you lock that in there. But then, the key, where do you put the key? You want the staff to be able to have the key. You don't want lots of keys. So then they had another safe, a smaller safe, that had a keypad on it that would change on a regular basis. So that was all very secure. And the key for the big safe was in the little safe with a keypad.
Right.
So when I come along, and that was in a room that had...
So this is almost like
two-factor
authentication. Yeah.
Exactly. a physical two-factor. And then just to make it more secure, the room that was in, which was a common room, it wasn't locked away room, but a room that was in, had a keypad on the door to get into that room. So if I want to get something out of that safe, I'm a staff member, I punch the keypad in the door, open the door, go in, punch the keypad on the safe. Oh, what's the pin this week? Right, make sure I know what that is. Take the key out, put the key in the safe, open the safe, take the product out, away I go, reverse the process. That was too much work, so guess what?
That is a lot of work.
The safe just stayed open all day, every day. So someone in a security design team somewhere designed this whole process, but because it was just so complicated, the safe was left open. Not
user-friendly.
The keypad safe was left open, and the door that had the keypad on it was also locked open. So anyone could just walk out the back, walk up to the safe, open that, and take things out of the safe. When you're designing whatever it is, and again, I think this is an issue when we talk about passwords, when sometimes people want to have a really complicated password and then make sure they change it every day or every week or do something that's ridiculous. I've walked into places and sitting there loud and proud on the monitor is the sticky note with
the password.
The password, that's right. This week's password. And you go, great, well done. You've done your job there. So keep that in mind when you are designing your processes.
Things have got to be easy enough, but not too easy.
Hard enough to make the criminal go, I'm going somewhere else, but easy enough to make the system easy to use for humans, easy to use for the people that meant to use it, while having some barrier there. So, I looked at all that and I went, yep, if the people who designed this saw that everything's just left open, they'd be in tears. But that's what people do. Humans take a sensible, easy path to get to the solution.
Just like water.
Exactly.
Well, folks, today we're listening in ever so carefully to Whispers of the Universe to hear what new secrets it has to offer up. For those of us with the need for speed, we'll check in with Boom Supersonic to see where they're up to with supersonic flight. And we'll take a tentative peek at the Doomsday clock to find out what we need to do to stave off Armageddon for just a little while longer. But for now, let's get stuck in with a story that may change life for the everyday consumer. Now, remember the revelation that occurred when you first discovered wireless charging? Well, it gets even better now, apparently. Qi2 is the new wireless charging experience that'll make you wonder how you ever coped before. Matt, what's all the hype about?
I'm going to go back a little bit. I do like to do this on an occasional story where we go back and just look a little bit about history. So we go back to Michael Faraday. So 1831 was when he discovered the principle of electromagnetic induction. So that's a long time ago.
Part of the HSC syllabus.
Oh, there you go. Well before we had wireless chargers and mobile phones, but he discovered that whole electromagnetic induction concept. And of course, Lenz developed that a bit further when he talked about the fact that the currents will oppose the change. So I suppose Faraday said there's induction there. Lenz went further and said, well, depending on which direction the movement is occurring, you get the opposition to that movement. So you had some direction associated with
Look up Lenz's law and try and work it out for yourself, folks, because it's a really hard one to sort of spit out over the microphone. Yeah.
And I often just offhand say that an electric vehicle relies on Lenz's law, so that you're using a battery to power the wheels when you're going forward, and when you want to slow down, the battery's being recharged by the wheels. So
it's making the wheels slow down as well.
Yeah, so that's a pretty cool concept. So that's about that whole direction. And then, of course, our good friend Nikola Tesla created the Tesla coil in 1891 based on Faraday's induction concept. And he demonstrated the practical side of transmitting electricity through the air, which you can imagine was pretty revolutionary in 1891, going, hold on, we've worked out this electricity thing a bit, and we have a cable that goes from there to there and electricity runs on the cable. But now you're saying it can go through the air? Now, Nikola got a bit excited about all that. And in 1904, he started construction of the Warden Cliff Tower because he wanted to transmit electricity everywhere, so everyone could have electricity for free. You just connect to the tower and, wow, look at this, it's fantastic.
And I don't know if it's a myth or not, but apparently people like George Westinghouse were pretty cranky about this because they were thinking, how the hell can we make money from it?
Correct. So
if it's going out through the air. But, yeah, that could, this could be a bit of a wives' tale. I'm not quite sure.
No, I think there's some fact in that because there were two issues with it. The first thing is that when you start dissipating power in 3 dimensions, then you need a whole bunch of power at the source for someone that's a couple hundred metres away.
The inverse square law means that you're going to get a reduction in the intensity of what you're sending out.
Yeah, to the square. So it's reducing quite dramatically. So Nikola thought he could get around that, and you probably could if you had a truckload of power, that's a technical term there, a truckload of power at the source. That wasn't working that well, but some of his investors said, what do you mean free? I don't get that. I'm giving you money here. And I know definitely JP Morgan, I don't know about George Westinghouse, but I know definitely JP Morgan was one of Tesla's investors who said, we like the wired, metered version of electricity more so than this unwired, free version of the electricity. So how about we don't give you any more money, Nicola, and we leave it alone?
So there's truth behind
truth
all that.
in that,
I can
definitely.
now go and spruik that story and feel a lot more confident in it. JP Morgan.
Just replace George with JP, and you've got some facts based there. But that didn't throw away the concept that electromagnetic induction was still a convenient method to get power from one place to another. But again, proximity, not Nikola's model of transmitting it long distance, but getting it with some proximity, so having things close to each other. We know that electromagnetic induction is used in the grid and used for generating power and used for a whole range of things on an industrial level. It wasn't until about the 1990s that we saw, hold on, this concept could work well on a much smaller scale. Oral-B brought out a toothbrush, and it's the first example I can see of induction for some type of powering or charging of a small device.
Yeah, right.
So they had a Oral-B electric toothbrush, and to charge it, you would sit it in a little charger, no wires attached. It would use induction to charge it, which is pretty cool because you're in the bathroom, there's water around, so having something that doesn't have any contacts or any things to get corroded or shorted out sounds pretty cool. So good on your Oral-B, you did well. And then once it was realised that this whole concept of wireless charging was a pretty cool concept, you had the Wireless Power Consortium, the WPC, was formed in 2008 because they said we should come up with a universal standard. Maybe that would make sense. If you're going to have toothbrushes and who knows what else come out, let's make sure it's to a standard. So they came out with this, And in 2010, they introduced Qi. Now, Qi is pronounced Qi.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm the same as you.
Yeah.
I normally say Qi to people because I say Qi and they think, what are you saying? Are you trying to say cheese? Do you want me to smile? It doesn't make sense to most people. So I'm the same as you. I say Qi.
Well, Qi is a high-scoring word on the Scrabble board too, when you can land it on a triple letter score.
How do you go when you're trying to say to someone, it's a word? Well, it's not really a word. It's two letters.
You pull out the dictionary like you do every other time, and anyone else who's got any experience in Scrabble knows about Qi.
And it's another one of those words that doesn't have a U after the Q. Not many of them out there.
Yeah.
I still think Qantas have a brilliant marketing concept because kids learn at school every word that's got the letter Q in it has the U except Qantas. So every kid from kindergarten up knows about Qantas. So what a great marketing concept.
It allows you to get out of jail on Scrabble.
Yep.
Qi.
Yep, there you go. So Qi, Qantas, if you haven't got a U and you got that Q, there's your one you're looking for. So they formed that and they produced this concept in 2010, Qi, where they said, let's have this standard concept for charging. And, by the way, Qi is derived from the Chinese word for energy flow.
Right.
So it has got some background there. So Nokia, with the Lumia 920 in 2012, was the first one to have a Qi charger in their phone, and Samsung with the Galaxy S3 at the same time frame, 2012. So it's been around for a while. It didn't really take off, but it started to gain a bit of momentum. And then when it really started to take off was in 2020 when Apple introduced their MagSafe on the iPhone 12. And the difference with MagSafe compared to everything else were, well, two differences actually. One, the magnet allowed you to put something on there and it held it up. So you could have a charger on your desk, it would hold it up there. You could put accessories on there like a little wallet on the back or a card holder. Or you could even have some sort of magnet in your car to hold it up, although if you're on a rough road, it probably falls off anyway because the magnet's not designed to be that strong. But the main reason you want the magnet is because you want the coils to line up perfectly. Normally when you put your charger on the desk or sitting somewhere and you drop your phone on it, you go, oh yeah, that's about right, or line it up a bit. Or I've had friends do this and they go, oh, my battery's flat today because I put it on my wireless charger last night and it didn't charge because I didn't line it up perfectly, didn't check it was right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So the magnet was great, but that also meant that you could go from typically wireless charging was about 7.5 watts. Now, when you had perfect alignment, a MagSafe charger can do 15 watts. So that's all good news. All good news if you're an Apple user, not so much if you're a Samsung user. So now, Qi2 if you like, is basically the new standard that's come out. And they brought this out in 2023 to say, we don't want to say it too loud, but that magnet thing that Apple came up with, not a bad idea actually. So they've basically stolen the MagSafe concept, and Qi2 is basically a magnet version of wireless charging. What have we got out now in phones? Not much. There's a HMD Skyline. No one's heard of that. Not many people actually have a HMD Skyline, but it was the first Android phone with Qi2, and the Samsung Galaxy S25. I think they missed a trick here. They've brought out their latest S25. So this has only just been released weeks ago, and it launched as Qi2 ready. So it doesn't have the magnets built into the phone like the Apple does, but you can put an accessory on there with magnets, and now it's Qi2 compatible. So it is lagging a little bit. Considering it was 2020 when Apple brought out their iPhone 12 with the MagSafe concept. So we're getting there, but not quite there yet. You want to get a charger that's Qi2 compatible, obviously. You want to get the phones that's Qi2 compatible, and then it will charge faster and it will stay in the right position. So we're progressing still with wireless charging, going back to 1831 when Faraday came up with the concept.
And we're getting, better and better and better. So, complicated medical procedures are set to get a big old Tony Stark-style makeover. Modern operating theatres are becoming more and more cluttered with tech these days, so it's time to borrow some ideas from the Marvel universe and maybe streamline how surgeries are done, Matt.
Yeah, exactly right. I love it when you've got fiction, comics, Marvel, Iron Man, whatever.
Much stuff has come out of it, been borrowed from sci-fi and fiction.
And if you're a really good scientist, really good researcher, you've probably got an active imagination because you've got to think of stuff. You've got to create stuff. So reading a few comics or watching a few movies, that might be enough to inspire you.
Yeah.
This is all based around Apple's Vision Pro. Now, it seems to be a lot of competition for a headset, for various AR and VR headsets for gaming, huge industry gaming.
Yeah.
And when you see a new headset, you think of gaming. Well, I do anyway. I think it's out for gaming. So that's all fine. So when you look at the Vision Pro, you think, okay, they're going to focus on gaming. They haven't been that successful with that, mainly, in my opinion anyway, because the little number of $3,500, that's how many dollars you'll pay for a Vision Pro headset. So it's been out for about a year and you're paying a lot of money for it. So sales haven't gone through the roof. And I don't know whether it's a deliberate strategy by Apple or whether it's just been coincidental, but you're seeing some other uses come for Vision Pro, and medical field is one of those areas. So when you've got people working on, well, surgeons, if you like, working on bodies, whether they're working on real bodies or they're working on cadavers, you're working on something that's expensive or delicate, as in a real human body. Or to get a cadaver, you're typically paying $10,000 for a research institute to get that, or a medical facility to get that, and then you can only cut it up so many times. I imagine you can't keep reusing it. I've seen some simulators that do something similar to a cadaver, but again, they're not ideal. What they're using a Vision Pro for, a couple of areas. One is they're using it for AR. So you can actually have a simulated body on a table, and you could use AR to do some of that work and actually work out what you're doing with images projected inside the Vision Pro headset.
Yeah, so you're wearing a headset. You don't have to worry about all this other stuff.
Well, you could have a physical body there to give you that physical presence as well, but you're virtually cutting it open. You're not really cutting it open, and the AR is helping you there. So that's point one. Training, absolutely. But you've also got, when you've seen some of those surgeries where they're getting into some areas where they need magnification and you really need a lot of information, a surgeon gets a lot of screens around the surgeon working on one particular body. So you're cutting or you're working one part, but you might be having a magnification camera. You're looking up at that. You're trying to see what you're doing. So it's not unusual to have 3 or 4 screens there, and the surgeon's got to look at all those and still be careful what they're doing. Yeah. They then said, well, could we actually have that image, that information projected inside the Vision Pro headset in an AR situation, an augmented reality situation? And so they're doing that already. And so there's already been 50 surgeries that have been undertaken where the surgeon is wearing a Vision Pro headset with information fed to them inside the headset about what's going on, or magnification, or things that have on other monitors, but they've got that through one headset there. Amazing. Now, I'm not sure how I'd love the concept when I'm laying down before they knock me out and look up at the surgeon and he's got a Vision Pro headset. My first thought would be,
goggles.
what are you playing? What game are you into there that you haven't got time to get away from that?
Please?
That's right. So that's quite fascinating as well. And then I think we'll still see situations where you'll have remote surgeries. So you might have someone who's a less skilled surgeon in a particular area, and they might use someone that's a long way away with a Vision Pro headset to be seeing what this surgeon's seeing and directing them on how they're going. I think Apple's onto something here. Their sales, their original sales, they predicted were about 3 million units a year. And at this stage, after a year, they've only sold about 400,000 units. So well below, which is unusual for Apple to be well below a sales target, but maybe they're going, actually, you know what? Maybe we've got a whole area here that we haven't explored. Maybe forget the gaming area. Maybe getting to the stage where we're using this in medical procedures. Wow. A lot of hospitals out there, a lot of surgery that happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a whole range of different things. So quite fascinating. And I think there's a lot that we talk about that can be applied in the whole healthcare industry, and this is just another one of those areas.
Witnesses to the Challenger disaster of 1985 will attest to the dangers of storing large volumes of hydrogen under pressure. Now, as we hurtle towards a future that's likely to include hydrogen-powered flight, the pressure is on us to improve current safety practices. And so, once again, scientists have turned to nature, Matt.
Well, what were you referring to in 1985?
Wasn't it? Was it the Challenger disaster, or was it 1987?
Yeah, no, sorry, that was 85 Challenger, but I was actually more thinking of Hindenburg as the one that comes to mind.
Actually, yeah, I don't know, but I was just the explosion of the space shuttle as it launched with Christy McAuliffe, the school teacher on board, first teacher into space. Well, that was the attempt at least.
Yeah.
But the Hindenburg, yes, of course, the Hindenburg.
So when I think of hydrogen disaster, I go to 1937 and think of Hindenburg. And when you said 1985, I'm thinking, what have I missed there? But I must admit, I wasn't thinking of the space
So when
shuttle.
was the Hindenburg? I think that was about 1936 or 37 or something.
Yeah. So that's the one that, just the image, I mean, the space shuttle was terrible, obviously, when everyone's watching again, a civilian going into space, how fantastic is that? And everyone's watching it, and then it went in different directions.
Well, the thing with the Hindenburg, yes, it was full of hydrogen, but there was the initial explosion, and then the really horrible stuff that they got on film was just all the material that was holding it together.
Yeah, that's right.
Burning to a crisp.
And those images there, they're kind of burnt into your memory as much as it was burnt into those people there.
Both terrifying sort of disasters,
And I think we've got to get hydrogen worked out as a fuel source because electric vehicles, electric batteries are great for short haul. So for people that are doing their daily commute or they're travelling between towns and they're doing a few hundred kilometres, EVs, absolutely fantastic. But for my truck driver to get on the truck and bring something from Perth to Sydney, he's not going to want to charge up every 500,000 kilometres because time on the road, those wheels rolling is making money. Sitting there charging up is not making money. And then you've got shipping, you've got planes, long-haul flights, you've got a whole range of things. Batteries are good for short, but when it gets longer, that's when you've got an issue. So hydrogen's being looked at, absolutely. But of course, one of the issues, and we've talked about this with some planes that are being developed, is it's a pretty dense or less dense substance that you're storing with hydrogen.
Yes, it's got such low density that leaks are a real problem. So you've got to keep your vessels super well pressurised and super sealed.
And then you've got to have the space to store that. So then what you often do is you pressurise it so you can have more in the volume that you've got.
Liquid hydrogen's better, yeah.
Exactly right. So then you get an issue where you've got to have things under high pressure. And then for a plane, for example, if you're going to have it under high pressure, you need to make sure you've got it built strong enough, and that means more weight. You don't want more weight on the plane. So there's a whole range of issues there.
Headaches,
that's right. And these will be solved. We've talked about it before. We think hydrogen will be a good fuel source for these particular circumstances, but how are we going to do it? Well, people are working on it. So some researchers from the Washington State University have worked out that maybe we could chemically combine hydrogen with lignin, which is obviously a natural source. It comes from timber.
It's the key source. Key ingredient of timber.
Yeah, so we can grow that. And if we could work out some way to combine lignin with hydrogen so you're not having to store it under high pressure, happy days. And that's exactly what they've done in a small scale, not ready to go and put into your long-haul trucks or your planes or ships yet, but certainly they've been able to bind hydrogen with lignin to give you something that's stable in a liquid form, and then you can extract hydrogen from that. So fascinating. I started reading that, we're going, wow, again, humans are clever. So some people will be working on how do we get the pressurised hydrogen into tanks that maybe aren't as heavy, or how can we store that? And someone else said, why don't we combine it with another naturally occurring source? And you go, what's that? What are you thinking of there? And of course, you try things, you think about things.
Yeah. Just so many brains thinking about a problem and the diversity of solutions. And this is such a creative solution.
It is. Now, I don't know exactly what format that takes. I don't know exactly what it looks like. But essentially, it would be something that...
Have wooden batteries.
Wooden batteries, that's right. Fill it up with wood. Something that you would have that would probably end up being a liquid form of this, I'm imagining, so you can refuel things easily and it can be stored easily. And then there's a chemical process that basically does something in reverse that extracts the hydrogen out of there. That runs the hydrogen. You've still got a clean fuel source because, as we know, when you burn in inverted commas the hydrogen, you get water as the output from that. So you're still doing all that. Absolutely crucial in this whole process is when you're creating the hydrogen in the first place. You're not creating it, you're extracting hydrogen from water, for example. You're doing that using renewable power. There's no good burning coal to produce the hydrogen to then have a clean fuel source. But again, people are working on that now. There is a lot of money being invested on producing green hydrogen. The next step is, well, we've got the green hydrogen, now how are we going to use it? And this is the way that we'll use it. So it's fantastic. There is some AI being used in the reverse process to get a better catalyst to basically get the reactions going back in the other direction. But again, I think that's just a problem to be solved. It's not an insurmountable problem. It's not something that's a deal breaker. So, yeah, just fantastic. So if you want to look for there's a study that's been published in Hydrogen Energy, and the study is called In Situ Dehydrogenation of Lignin-Based Jet Fuel, a novel and sustainable liquid organic hydrogen carrier. I cheated. I read that. I didn't remember that one. So I reckon if you're looking for it,
have a look at it.
That's right. Go and have a look for that particular article in Hydrogen Energy, and you'll get all the lowdown on this particular concept, which is fascinating.
Awesome development. The universe continues to offer up mysteries to keep our astrophysicists on their toes. Now, I, for one, remain stubbornly confident that the chances of alien life making any sort of contact with Earth are negligible at best. However, fast radio bursts, or FRBs, are being detected more and more commonly, and astronomers are getting excited. But perhaps not about aliens yet, Matt. Not
about aliens. But I want to tell a story, and I may have told this story before because I love this story. I was at the Parkes telescope one day doing some work there with some of the...
And you saw an alien?
Well, almost. We heard about an alien. I heard about the story about when the Parkes telescope detected alien life. And I thought, this is fascinating. I haven't heard about this. And so the story was told to me. And Parkes telescope, of course, for people that don't know, it's often called the Dish. It's a 64-metre radio telescope. It was critical in the moon landing. That's what most people remember or first heard about the land. That's right. So that was... over there doing some work there, and they said back in the 90s and early 2000s, or maybe even the mid-2000s, they were convinced they'd found alien life because they were getting some bursts of perytons, P-E-R-Y-T-O-N-S,
right,
and they were sporadic. They were coming from somewhere in space. They were sporadic, so it wasn't like there was a star doing something consistent and out were coming perytons. It was just random, and every now and again they'd say, "Oh, we've seen some more. What's going on there?" and trying to work out what it was. The problem was solved in 2015. So this went on for a long time, and what they found was there was an old microwave oven. If you had a specific circumstance where you'd put the timer on, the time would go, the time would finish, you'd open the microwave oven, no problems. If you looked in and you saw your cup of coffee boiling or whatever and the timer hadn't finished and you opened the door, a little burst of radio frequencies around the same frequency as perytons escaped from that microwave. And the dish,
detected
sitting
them
very close to it, because the microwave is obviously underneath the dish. The office is underneath the dish, or just nearby, and the dish is pointing upwards. But enough leaked through the back. We've got a burst there, and so you can imagine it wasn't. If it were just when the microwave was turned on, it wouldn't have. I think someone would have picked it up earlier, because it was like, hold on, I turned the microwave on at 10 o'clock this morning, and we picked up. Hold on, no, I've worked out what it is. But because it's not that often that you open the microwave before it's finished its time, and normally you turn it on, it goes ding, you open the microwave. So it might have happened once every month or two. It might have been maybe someone worked there who tend to open it more often than other times, so there's more of these perytons being detected. Anyway, it's a great story of make sure you're getting down, you're researching down to the nth degree to see what might be.
You've got to look at all the angles, haven't you?
The angles,
well,
right.
I'm sure that I saw a documentary. I'm sure it was about the SETI planning, the search for extraterrestrial life and whatnot. And we've been receiving, these signals from space and whatnot, but they were just all explained by, just normal star activity and whatnot. And then there was a blip, just a tiny little glitch in there. Over the 20 years that they'd been at that stage that they'd made the documentary, and there was a blip, and they had them all in a tiz. And I'm just thinking about the guy with his coffee mug now.
What's going on here?
But anyway, so FRBs.
FRBs. Yep. So back to the story at hand. Sorry. So CSIRO have got their ASCIP telescope, radio telescope. This is over in WA. And the dish is one telescope, one 64-metre telescope. They've got another little 12-metre dish near the main dish in Parkes, but they don't use those two combined in an array. They've got different purposes, the two dishes. But over in WA, you've got 36 dishes spread across 6 kilometres that are effectively used as one big mother dish. Again, using technical terms here. So using that and using a new system they've got. So they used to use a system that was called I can't remember what that one was called, but the new system's called CRACO, C-R-A-C-O. They used to run, the Craft was the old one that was called, C-R-A-F-T. They've got a new system called CRACO, and that processes about 100 billion pixels per second to try and identify FRBs in real time. Now, they've detected about 20, and they've explained most of them. So there's 2 sporadically emitting neutron stars. They know about those. That's fine. They've got 4 pulsars that they've improved the location data for. So they're knowing about these various ones, but they can't quite explain all 20 of these FRBs that they're seeing. Now, again, because the accuracy is so good, they're detecting things that they couldn't see before, and the precision is allowing them to see which galaxies some of these are coming from. So you're talking about not even coming from our galaxy. These are coming from other galaxies. So they've travelled for a long time, and they've still got enough strength that we're actually picking them up here. Now, again, we are talking about a 6-kilometre array of telescopes to actually pick them up. So they're pretty hard to pick up. But will we start to find that maybe some of these are coming from alien life?
Maybe.
I'm with you. I don't think so. But I just reckon if there were aliens out there, they would have come to see us before now. But they've got to travel a long way.
These could be neutron stars, pulsars.
They could be neutron stars. They could be magnetised neutron stars, magnetars. They could be alien technology, but that's way down the list. In fact, researchers kind of go, yeah, sure, but there's probably lots of other natural things that are happening that are causing this as well. But I do find it fascinating that we are looking back in time, because you've got to think about when you emit something from something that's 1 million light years, 10 million light years, even just a light year. That's looking back in the past from a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So some of these signals are coming would have been sent at the time that the dinosaurs were roaming the Earth, and some of them well before that.
That's right.
And some of them before there was any life on Earth.
And if we did pick up some alien life, it's not as if we can say there's aliens out there, because they might have been out there a million years ago, millions of years ago.
Just before their planet blew up.
That's right. Just before they had a nuclear war, just before climate change happened on that planet. But quite fascinating, and it's worth looking at that.
And certainly for those young budding astrophysicists out there, those kids in school right now who are looking to get out and get their hands into astrophysics as they grow up.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we do have good technology here in this country, and international researchers do come and visit us. Yeah, so quite fascinating.
Free Tech Talk book. Here's your chance to grab a free copy of the latest Tech Talk compilation book in 3 easy steps. Step 1. Listen to any Tech Talk episode. Step 2. Leave a review on your favourite podcast app. Step 3. Email a screenshot of your review to freebook@techtalk.digital with your name and address. The first 20 emails received this week will receive a free book. Don't wait. You are listening to this podcast right now. Leave a review on the app you are listening to this on, and send that screenshot to freebook@techtalk.digital. Tech Talk, your gateway to the tech world.
Now, you may remember from way back a little smartwatch company called Pebbles. Pebbles was, in fact, the first smartwatch, from what I understand, and really kicked some life into the wearable tech industry. Well, the life of Pebbles ran its course all too quickly and was swallowed up by the tech giants after only a couple of successful years. But Matthew, Pebbles has risen from the dead in 2025, and it wants its market share. Ooh. It's a zombie company.
I'm not sure if it'll get its market share, but it might get a few sales. So you're right, Pebble was one of the first modern smartwatches. 2012 it came out. So fantastic.
Yeah.
Before Apple or Samsung had their pesky little competitors. And they sold about 2 million units. And then once you got some other companies coming along, it didn't go so well. It didn't have all the features, didn't have the integration with the other devices, the other phones. And so in 2016, it got to the stage where it was bought out by Fitbit. Don't know how much they bought because there wasn't probably much left. And then Google, of course, acquired Fitbit. So
Pebbles wasn't able to adapt.
No.
So it ran its course.
It ran its course. It got bought out, and that was it. But now you've got to the stage where the Pebble concept, the operating system, the Pebble OS, is open source. Google has made it open source. So the original founder of Pebble, Eric Migakovsky.
Oh, well said.
Apologies if that wasn't his exact pronunciation. But he said, I'm going to bring back the Pebble. It's all open source now. I can go and do that. And it's again a simple design. That's what he's focused on. It's not going to have the ability to go and do mobile payments. It's not going to have all the various fitness aspects that a modern smartwatch has. It's going to have a few basic things. It's not going to have a touch screen. It's going to have physical buttons. That makes it cheaper to manufacture. It makes it a bit easier to manufacture smaller because you don't have so much technology built into it. And it's going to have a week-long battery life. So that alone is enough to get me interested because charging your smartwatch every day becomes a bit of a hassle.
Well, there are a lot of people wearing smartwatches right now who are using 20% of the features, 10% of the features of that smartwatch.
So it's going to have Bluetooth, that's fine, but it's not going to have things like LTE, or it's not going to be able to have a mobile device on its own. It'll only work like the first Apple smartwatches when they came out. You had to have your mobile phone nearby. It's going to be the same as that. So it's not going to have all that technology built in. It's going to do some basic things there. You're going to be able to hack it. It's made to be hackable, so you can actually modify it. You can change the face. You can go back to the original faces or put some modern faces on there. You're going to tinker and play with it. It's not for someone who wants to put it on and basically go and do their run and record their run. It's going to be someone who wants to play around with it and just basically have something that's simple. And I actually see more of this concept where some people go, oh my gosh, these new smartphones, they do so many things.
Too much in them.
They're bigger, they're complicated. I want to make a phone call. Can I just do that? No, sorry, that's not a feature. You've got to add that feature on. You need an app for that. So I think this is actually quite interesting. I don't know how well they'll go. Good luck to him for saying, let's have a crack. And I imagine they're going to be cheap. They haven't actually released it yet, but I imagine they're going to be fairly cheap as well because smartwatches are getting dearer and dearer.
They are.
And just like smartphones, every new model that comes out this year, it's a bit bigger than last year. Why? Just the size was okay. Give me more features, not necessarily a bigger phone. But I think
there's a call for the simple things in life.
I think so. I think absolutely. Yeah. But I'll tell you in a couple of months' time after I see how Pebble sales go.
It's time for a progress update on Boom Supersonic. For those who can remember the Concorde and regret missing their chance to break the sound barrier, Boom Supersonic is looking to restore commercial supersonic flights and do it soon. Matt, all signs are looking good at this stage from what I gather.
And you're right, we have talked about Boom Supersonic previously,
recently,
but we're making I like the we there, they are making good progress. We're
a part of it.
That's right.
We're buying in.
To the collective. So the Concorde, I'm one of those who regrets not flying on the Concorde. 1976, were the first commercial flights of the Concorde.
And the last one?
2003. Yeah. So I didn't get on the Concorde. I've had friends of mine that went on the Concorde. You don't really know you're flying supersonic.
No, you're in an airplane.
As we know from, and help me which law it is, something that stays at you don't know you're moving unless you've got an external unbalanced force.
It's just inertia.
On you.
Yeah,
but it's, isn't that Newton's second law?
Newton's first as we talk about. Yes, most like inertia. But you everything around you is travelling at the same speed. You've done your acceleration when you take off.
That's right.
And you don't really hit supersonic speed until you're over the ocean because they don't like dropping sonic booms over people's houses. No, that's right.
So when you're on the Concorde, or when you were on the Concorde, and you look out the window, you're doing, well, actually, it went up to Mach 2.04, the Concorde, so you're doing twice the speed of sound. Normally on a jet intercontinental flight, you're flying at maybe Mach 0.9. You look out the window, you as a human would know no difference. There's no trees going past you out the window. If there are, you're in a bit of trouble.
And you can't see the sonic boom.
You can't see the sonic boom, that's right. So,
but the Concorde used to be really heavy because it carried so much fuel, right?
Because it used to burn a lot of fuel, that's right.
Yeah.
And they were fairly small. The Concorde only seated about 92, depending on which configuration, up to 128 people. So not too big because, again, they had to move all that weight and all that fuel. So
plenty of personal service from the stewardesses and the stewards, yeah?
Yeah, I think they did that because the tickets were so expensive they had to make you feel a bit better. So the Concorde retired, and it's fascinating to me. We talk about the 747s coming out, introduce that whole jet flight around the world back in the 60s, 70s, and we're not going much faster now than we did back then. So many things have progressed and changed, and we're safer, I grant that.
And people want to travel fast.
They do. And I often joke to people when they're buying their business class or first class tickets, you go, well, we all get there at the same time, so I don't know if there's much of an advantage in buying those. It is a bit more comfortable, but apart from that, but this would be something you get there a bit faster. So Boom Supersonic, they've got their plane, the Overture. They've been doing some testing on it. At this stage, they've got a 1/3 scale demonstrator. So they're building it to scale, but 1/3 scale. So you're not putting a bunch of passengers on there. You're not putting any passengers on there. You're putting a pilot on there and saying, there you go, sign this waiver that all bets are off if something goes wrong. So they've been flying. They've just flown Supersonic, the first commercial airliner, even though it's not really commercial because it's not flying people yet, first commercial airliner to fly Supersonic since the Concorde. And they've flown Mach 1.11. Now, they're going further than that. Their cruise speed when they finish this product will be at 1.7. Don't know why they're going slower, slightly slower than the Concorde, but they've decided Mach 1.7 seems to be about the right speed. And they've been doing this across the Mojave Desert in California, which I'm intrigued about because what you said before was correct with the Concorde. When it took off, its main flights were New York to London, so it didn't take long to get across the ocean and away it went. But I was under the same understanding that you can't fly supersonic speeds above mainland America, but maybe there's special exemptions around the desert there so they can do testing out there, I'm guessing.
And just scare a couple of cattle ranchers maybe.
That's right. So they think also with the design of this, with modern aerodynamics and modern engineering, they believe that they've reduced the sonic boom. NASA's got their experimental X-59 aircraft, which really is trying to go quieter again. They haven't gone as far as the X-59, but they have certainly gone to the stage where they say it's reduced sonic boom. But
that's amazing. So breaking the sound barrier without a sonic boom.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, okay.
I'd say there's a lessened sonic boom. A dampened one, that's right. But again, you've got now AI to throw.
Is awesome.
It is AI to throw at this problem and say, or throw this problem at AI and say, I want to reduce the sonic boom. How can we reduce it? How can we break that up so that it isn't affecting people on the mainland? Now, they're still not saying you'll be able to fly this across the mainland. We can't go and fly it across the land anywhere. But maybe if they can reduce that sonic boom, they'll be allowed to fly that. Maybe you've got to get to a certain height before you can go above the speed of sound, climb to 30,000 feet and then go for it and put your foot down kind of thing. So that might be good. So this will carry about 64 to 80 passengers. And I read the fact that you've got United Airlines, American Airlines, Japan Airlines already put in pre-orders, 130 of these. Wow. And they say they'll be flying by 2029. And I thought, it's a long way away. But then I looked at the calendar.
Yeah.
We're in 2025.
And last year was only 2020.
It seems like that, doesn't it? When did that happen? When did we go to 2025? So 4 years away. I'm excited. I want to go over with Japan or American or United and get on one of these and fly above the speed of sound. They're advertising, obviously, things like New York to London, 3.5 hours. And that's kind of about what the Concorde did. If you're flying now, if you go and do a flight between New York and London with the current commercial airlines, you're doing that, depending on headwinds, etc., 6 to 8 hours is kind of the time frame.
So 3.5 hours.
Pretty impressive.
Almost a commute.
It's almost a commute. You could fly there. I think Concorde used to run ads like that. Fly to London for a day's work and come back home and kiss the kids goodnight. Concorde's best time for New York to London, again, probably relied on some headwinds not being there, 2 hours and 52 minutes for the Concorde.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But their normal,
that's a record.
That's right, their normal flight time was around 3.5 hours. So the same sort of time frame. So this is pretty exciting. They've got their medium bypass turbofan producing about 160 kilonewtons of thrust. So you need that is a lot of thrust. That's right, more than my car's got. So you need that obviously because even though they typically fly higher than normal, you've still got some air resistance. That's all you're fighting to try and keep the speed up there is air resistance. So you go higher, so there's a little bit less air around. So it's all good. They've got 100% sustainable aviation fuel they'll be using in this. And they won't have the classic droop nose of the Concorde. Of course, the droop nose was so that it could cut through the air while it was flying at supersonic speeds, but then you needed it to drop down so the pilots could see the runway to actually land. They'll be using, of course, some augmented reality in the cockpit.
There you go.
Not using a Vision Pro headset, but just using augmented reality in the cockpit to be able to land that and then not have to change the physical structure. Because I imagine there would have been a bit of engineering to drop that nose down, but then make it so that it was strong enough when it came up, you could actually get the airflow
without the
hitting
thing
it.
falling off.
That's right. That
mid-flight at any stage. And from what I remember, it never did fall off. So well done, the engineers on that.
No, that's right. So the ticket prices they're saying will basically be the same sort of ticket price as a business class flight. So I'd be happier paying business class airfares when I am getting there fast.
If you knew you were getting there fast.
In half the time, basically. So bring it on, 2029. I'm booking my tickets now.
Sky's the limit. Here's a story for the computer nerds. It'll get your algorithms all in a twist. Apparently, simulating airflow and turbulence is pretty heavy going for your run-of-the-mill computer, and it can take ages for computers to run it. Well, some Oxford University geeks have been inspired by quantum computing developments, and they've come at it from a new angle, Matt.
I actually remember talking to a friend who worked at a university in the physics department one day, and he was telling me that the clever people in physics go into air resistance, turbulence. It's incredibly complicated to work out how you might calculate the turbulent flow that might occur around any shaped object. Now, I think the clever people go into turbulence, etc., at university until a Formula One team snaps them up because they're pretty focused on turbulence as well, aren't they?
It makes me feel much better when my students say, hey, listen, we're talking about projectile motion and everything, but what about air resistance? And I say, we don't have to worry about air resistance. And the kids go, come on. So, I say, well, you can worry about that when you're doing your fourth year at university.
That's right, and get snapped up by an F1 team. So it is a problem, and when they put some calculations together to see what might happen with airflow, and this might be airflow around the weather, for example. We know it's a common joke, isn't it, weather forecasters? How can you have a job that you get things wrong so often?
Well, it's the most unaccountable job, isn't it? You just stand in front of the camera and just say whatever you want.
That's right, because whatever happens the next day, it's whatever anyway.
Well, I've forgotten what they said.
Well, it doesn't matter what they say because it won't be a true
that's
prediction.
Right. Anyway.
So when you start to talk about those sort of things, you start to get algorithms that take a long time. So, for example, you might book out some time on a supercomputer and you might put some calculations together for some particular airflow, and that will take a few days to calculate. So you can imagine there's some pretty heavy computations going on. But based on some quantum-inspired algorithms, now we talk about quantum computers a little bit. I don't talk about them too much because it still seems like we're 5 years away, but we've been 5 years away for 20 years.
Big developments still to come, but
that's right.
Hold on to your hats, folks.
So I like to talk about real things that are happening on this podcast. And so quantum, I'm not sure about that. But in working with some processes in quantum, they've been able to work out some new algorithms where they're taking things that would take those days on a supercomputer and they're able to do them within hours on a normal PC just by modifying the algorithms. Now, what they're saying is that we're actually at the point where we don't think they're quite as accurate as the days-long calculation, but it's so close that we can do them and then change our inputs, change their calculation, so we'll actually, through iterations, get to a better answer, even though the first answer may not be as accurate. It's an interesting way to look at it.
It's just coming at a problem from a different angle.
It is.
As I tried to allude to before, Yeah,
that's right. So 1,000-fold decrease in processor demand and 1,000,000-fold decrease in memory requirements just by using a different algorithm. And I say just is a bit more than just. So they'll look at things like weather forecasts, there'll be industrial applications for this. We'll get ways of looking at the eddies, how they interact. I remember watching an air crash investigation show one time and how far back planes have to be when they're coming to land when they're flying behind a heavy, they're flying behind a 747 or an A380 because these eddies that hang around in the air for kilometres after the plane can actually have an impact. So, that, again, watching air crashes, there have been cases where planes have crashed because they've been too close behind a large plane.
Eddies,
so
you just can't trust them.
You can't trust them, especially on a still day. Eddies love still days. They hang around forever. So when you start looking at interacting eddies, you get basically chaos. But there are methods or are patterns to these chaos, but trying to work out those patterns is incredibly complicated. So if we can get this right, we'll be able to predict weather better. Thankfully, finally, that might be a better way because you can predict where air will go. We'll be able to get better range out of EVs because we'll be able to predict airflow over an EV and, of course, be able to go faster on a Formula One track, all those important things that we're trying to do. But it is fascinating that we've been working with this for so long and suddenly quantum computer research has led to classical computer. I don't know if we can call it classic computers yet, but the distinction between quantum and normal computing.
Won't be long before we talk about classic computers. And everyone's using quantum computers anyway.
Exactly right.
Now, every year, right about now, we get an update from the boffins who manage the Doomsday clock. It's designed as something of a warning of global catastrophe, and while many are dismissive and others are quite fatalistic, there's got to be somewhere in between which lies a pause for thought and some action towards a little more care on how things are done around here. Matt, where's the Doomsday clock sitting now, and why all the hubbub?
Well, I'll get to where it sits now. I'll go back a little bit first of all. You've got the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, and they adjust the clock annually. So each year they say, how close are we to midnight? Midnight being the end of civilization as we know it. So not a great place to be.
No.
They introduced this back in 1947, and it was initially set at 7 minutes to midnight. So we'd gone a long way through civilization, and we were pretty close when the clock first started. And that was really focused on the Cold War. There was a lot of discussion back in 1947 and years afterwards to say, we're going to blow each other up. You're going to press the red button. We're going to press the red button. We're going to send these missiles at each other, and the planet's going to be destroyed. There's going to be a nuclear war, and everyone's going to be impacted, the entire planet.
Yeah, so from about 47 all the way through the 80s, I remember, that was really big, and
it was
worried about the Cold War and the threat of nuclear
Now,
strike.
when the Bulletin set the clock in 1991, it was not too bad compared to what was first set. 17 minutes to midnight in 1991.
They'd gone backwards.
When the Cold War effectively ended. Like you said, there's a lot of
They
discussion
brought down
around
the
the 80s.
Berlin Wall and
All sorts of wonderful things, yep. But since then, the Bulletin has said we're going to keep using this, but we're going to look at not just the nuclear threat. That was obviously the initial part of it. We're now going to look at climate change, artificial intelligence, biological risks, pandemics. What's that going to do to our nuclear clock? And the latest update has us at 89 seconds to midnight.
Yeah, that's not real good, is it?
That's not as good as 17
Makes 7
minutes.
minutes and 17 minutes look really, really good.
It does.
Yeah.
Now, the clock moved to 90 seconds in 2023. In 2024, it stayed at 90 seconds. And now in 2025, it's gone 1 second closer. Now, the whole idea here is it's not real. It's not going to tick away at a certain rate and then we get to midnight and that's it, it's all over. It's really trying to make us think as a society to say, what are we doing? We know we can change this. We know we've got actions we can take. We know we can put regulation in place with AI. We know we can take action against climate change. We know we can do research on biological risks, either something that happens maybe naturally out of a pandemic or maybe a biological war. Maybe we should think about doing something of these.
Yes, so the care that's got to be taken here is if you're too alarming, then people dismiss it.
Yep.
And if you're not alarming enough, people are very casual about it. And so we're looking for some sort of happy ground in between where people will actually pause for thought and think, yeah, we do need to be a bit careful.
So the clock itself is displayed physically at the University of Chicago, if you're interested in going and doing it there. And the clock design was done by Martel Langsdorff. Now, that name doesn't mean anything to me.
No.
Martel was the wife of a Manhattan Project scientist. And so, obviously, there was a bit of concern by Manhattan Project people. Some of them were very concerned, Einstein included, saying, we're doing something that's really bad for society, but we've got to do something to make sure the other side doesn't go and use this in a bad way.
What did Oppenheimer say? I am become death, destroyer of worlds, from a Hindu poem, yeah.
So that was, I thought that was fascinating, a little bit of trivia, that the design was done by someone who was seeing what was happening with the Manhattan Project up close, not involved in it, but obviously the wife, I've probably heard a few stories when her husband came home. So again, it was all about that urgency of the nuclear race, but now it's about the next urgent thing that we've got to look at. Yeah, keep your eye on it. Maybe think what you can do about helping reverse that clock.
Yeah, it's just about quiet contemplation and hopefully some activity as well. Now, last week we talked about the news on the Deepseek, the AI engine out of China that just might break its Western counterparts. Matt, you've got a couple more tidbits to add today. Is Deepseek worth all the buzz it's getting?
Just a few little updates, I suppose. It has captured a lot of media attention, so I thought it was worth talking about. I actually tried to use Deepseek, but it told me there were too many users there and I couldn't register to actually use it. So I must admit I didn't keep persevering. I'm probably sure I could have if I kept trying it there, but I haven't actually used Deepseek yet. But I know my son's played around with it a little bit and he said it's not too bad, the answers they get, but his workplace has said no one's allowed to use Deepseek. Various governments across the world have said no more Deepseek, and we talked about it last week. If the American government was worried about TikTok, about people sharing their data with a Chinese company, then asking detailed
Deepseek,
questions using an AI tool,
is
and
opening
surely
the floodgates.
That's right, and more than that, not just asking questions, feeding the data in, but getting questions that have been curated by a Chinese organisation, that's going to be cause of concern. And many people have been concerned, and they've basically shut down access to it. But I still think there's some fascinating things. So the Deepseek R1, the model at the moment R1, was created by a team of hundreds of researchers with a budget only millions of dollars. Now, that's what they're telling us. And I do wonder whether or not maybe someone in China said, here's a way we can infiltrate the entire society. Let's go and throw 10,000 scientists at this and billions of dollars and create something. And we'll tell them we did it better than everyone else. We'll tell them we did it easier and we're smarter than everyone else. We only used a few scientists and a few dollars to do it, and our model's better. So I take the information with a grain of salt about how many, but that's the story so far. It's hundreds of researchers, millions of dollars, compared to US firms, ChatGPT, etc., billions of dollars, and obviously a lot more than hundreds of scientists. And they've used this concept with reinforcement learning. So they first of all looked at areas that have got a clear answer. So if it was mathematics or it was coding, whether it was an obvious yes or no, they used that to basically train the model. So then when you go to things that have got a more obscure answer, what's my best move in backgammon? Well, there's a whole range of answers that could be. So use that same reasoning that you use to black and white answers and use that same reasoning to more abstract answers. So that's kind of the concept of where they've done things a little bit differently. The real, I suppose, test with this is compare it to one of the other models that have a lot more money spent, a lot more energy, using a lot more power, and compare the answers that gives compared to the answers this gives and see which gives the better answers. And sometimes that might just be my opinion. I like that one better. Well, no, we need something a bit more scientific to measure those answers to see what's better. But what I do know, lots of things I don't know about this, but what I do know is the AI competition across the world is absolutely hotting up. I remember when Yahoo, Alta Vista and Google and various search engines were around, you knew that somewhere in all of that there was going to be a search engine quest or a search engine competition. Someone would win the race and Google won the race. But there's a lot of activity. And I think with AI at the moment, I'm seeing something similar where there's lots of activity. You've got Gemini, you've got obviously ChatGPT, you've got Deepseek, you've got other little ones out there as well. They're all competing in the space and someone's going to win the race. Someone's going to be, no longer I AI'd that, a bit like Google. You don't go, I searched that, I Googled it. There'll be
you Deepseeked it or you...
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say I ChatGPT'd it, but if they're going to do that, they need a better name because ChatGPT's got too many syllables. Doesn't roll off the tongue. I Deepseeked it. It comes off the tongue easier than I ChatGPT'd it.
Goodness me.
I Gemini'd it.
Which way are we
I think you
go?
need 2 syllables. I think 2 syllables. Gemini, too many syllables. Google. I Googled it. Rolls off the tongue easier. Deepseek, 2 syllables. That rolls off the tongue. I'm basing this on no scientific research here.
Either way, whichever engine we go with, I just wonder if can I trust their model for their Doomsday vault or whatever your bunker, my bunker that I need to build in the backyard for when the end of days comes.
I don't know if you can trust them at all.
Yeah. We're in the era of AI and cross your fingers and hope for the best, I think, folks.
I think so.
And with a spectacular flourish of the checkered flag, this race is run. And all that's left to do is spray everyone with cheap sparkling wine. So I guess if we don't want to get all wet and sticky and uncomfortable for the ride home, we should probably just go now. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
That's all right, thank you. And I'm going to look at those airlines and see if I can book 4 years in advance.
4 years in advance, is that all?
The first flight.
Get the cheap seats, huh?
That's right, yeah. I bought it so many years ago, surely it's going to be cheaper.
And thank you all for taking your time out from your busy schedules and tuning into another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. I've been your host, James Eddy, and you can trust this Eddy. And it's a pleasure to bring you the latest news from the world of science and gadgetry week after week. We hope that you enjoyed today's show enough to come back next week for another episode, freshly unwrapped and straight out of the box. Until then, take care.